Hi everyone, I'm so thankful to have you with me today. Welcome back to my returning subscribers and welcome to any new subscribers who might be joining me today. In this video, I'm going to show you I'm going to show you 5 DIYs for Valentine's that all come in under $5. This is a great challenge hosted by Emily from Farm Charm Chic and Missy from the Crafty Cove DIY. Today, their guest host is Ellie from House to Home. I'll have a link to all their channels in the description box below and a link to the playlist where I'm sure you'll find great inspiration, and all the DIYs are coming in under $5 today. So let's get started. DIY number 1. For this first DIY, I started with one of these unfinished wood decor pieces from Dollar Tree. It said Happy Valentine's Day. I started by removing the hanger and giving the entire thing, including the sides as best as possible, 2 coats of my white chalk paint. This is Bear's brand of chalk paint from Home Depot. When that was all dry, I went in with a small brush and the holiday red acrylic paint from Dollar Tree and painted over the word Valentines. I gave this 2 coats, laying it dry in between, and tried to do the sides of the letters as best as possible. Sides, tops, and bottoms of the letters that weren't touching anything else as best as possible. When this was all dry, I did have some areas where I went out of the line, so to speak, which I'm showing you right here. But not to worry, I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. I'm just going to take my white paint pen that is from Walmart, and I'm just going to go over the areas where the red has come onto the white words. In some places where the red was a little more heavy on the white, I did have to go over it a couple of times with my paint marker, but it covered it pretty much completely that it wasn't too noticeable. When all the touch-ups were dry, I came in with a very fine-tipped Sharpie marker that I believe I got at Dollar Tree and gave the words happy and day some faux stitching around the edges of the letters. I just do this by putting little dashes around the letters. To embellish the hearts on the sign, I used some of Dollar Tree's foam heart stickers and just adhered them onto the raised hearts. I adhered some to the raised hearts and some to the non-raised hearts because they're not all raised. At the end in the reveal, you'll see that I did add one more pink foam sticker to the heart in the top left-hand corner by the beginning of the word happy. Using 4 of these wooden garden tags that I get from Dollarama in their summer months, in their garden section, obviously, I cut off the tips so that they were all straight edges. But if you can't find these, the paint stir sticks or the wooden rulers from Dollar Tree, any of those will work because we're just going to frame out the word decor piece. So I cut down the pieces till they fit, and I just got them to fit, or I figured out the measurements by just laying them down and seeing where I needed to cut. So I placed them around the sign so that a little bit would be touching at the top, sides, and bottom on the back of the frame, and then just marked with a pencil where I needed to make my cuts to shorten some of the side pieces. After all my cuts were made, I stained the wood pieces with my favorite water-based stain. I love this stuff because there is no scent to it. You can use it inside. It dries super fast, easy cleanup with just water and soap. It's Minwax's brand of water-based stain, and it's in the color American Walnut, I believe. I will double check and let you know for sure, but I believe it's American Walnut. I just painted on and with a paintbrush, and that's it. I let it dry. Easy peasy. Love this stain. If you don't want to go out and purchase the stain, by all means, I have also used burnt umber acrylic paint from Dollar Tree and just watered it down. It works just almost as good, and it's a great alternative to an actual stain. When my frame pieces were dry, I began assembling them. I did this by putting a line of hot glue at the top and bottom of the sides where the top and bottom pieces of the frame would touch. I made sure to adhere these on my silicone mat, as I knew because it was very thin wood that glue would seep through the top and bottom, and I didn't want it to stick to my work surface. I also quickly wiped away any glue that seeped through to the front to try and make it less noticeable. There is some that I do have to go back and clean up later on, which I will show you, but it's no big deal. Just try to get as much off as you can right away. To give the frame added support, I just used some of the leftover wooden tag pieces and cut them down into smaller pieces and hot glued them along the seams of the frame at the back. To adhere the wood words into the frame, I was going to mark it with a pencil, then didn't want any pencil showing through, so then I tried to figure out where the glue would be touching. Of course, I got it wrong on the red part and had to wipe it off. I do have to touch it up with some paint later on, just because I didn't like the glue showing. As you can see in the light, you can see where it's shiny still. Anyways, I'd probably in the future mark it with a pencil and just erase the pencil lines after putting the glue on or just before putting the glue on. That way I would have known exactly where to add the glue instead of trying to guess the way I did. Here also at the top and bottom, I was a little better at getting the glue in place because I was able to just hold the frame away from the words and added a little bit of glue. Any that seeped through, I tried to rub away as quickly as possible so that it wouldn't be noticeable from the front. Now, as you can see, the back of my wooden words aren't finished. I do usually finish fronts and backs, but this time I didn't. Where I'm going to be hanging it, it's not going to bother me that the back isn't finished, but if I was to sell this or gift this away, I probably will do a quick coat of paint on the back of my project. I just added a little bit of jute to the top as my hanger with some hot glue, and that was it. I hope you like it. DIY number 2. For DIY number 2, I started with one of these wood hanging decor pieces. It's an unfinished piece of wood that you can get from Dollar Tree. I began by removing the hanger and then staining the front, back, and sides with my favorite Minwax water-based stain in American Walnut. Taking one of these hearts off a hanging wall decor piece from Dollar Tree, I begun by sanding off as much glitter as possible off the front and then tried to remove as much of the paper tape that was holding it together on a ribbon connected to some other ones. Tried to get that off the back as best as possible also. With my holiday red acrylic paint from Dollar Tree, I gave the heart 2 coats, letting it dry in between on the front, and I gave it 1 coat on the back just to kind of even it all out. Not much of the heart of the back of the heart will be seen, but there will be a bit, so I just wanted to kind of clean it up a bit. When the heart was dry, I was able to place it onto my wooden sign just to give me an idea of where I could place my writing. This time, I'm not going to use my Cricut as I usually do just because I am not a fan of my own writing, but I thought I would take a risk and show you guys that hand lettering is possible. I went out of my comfort zone and did it for this project here. You may not see it too often coming up. There is one more project that you will see me do it, but then I back out and go for my Cricut. But hand lettering is possible. Stickers are possible. Cricut obviously makes it very possible. But I just went in with my pencil first, wrote out what I wanted to write, and then came in with my white paint marker from Walmart and went over my letters. When my wording was all dry so that I wouldn't smudge it, I was able to finish with the embellishing of this sign. I hot glued the heart into place where I had used it as a marker so I knew where to put my writing. I hot glued it in place, then went in with some jute twine and wrapped it around 3 times and tied it in the front just with a simple knot. Then I tied a simple shoelace bow and used a little dot of hot glue to help hold it in place so that it was where I wanted it. Then I cut 2 more strips of jute twine, just used them the lengths at various lengths so that they were kind of staggered because I'm going to glue some of, actually not glue, I'm just going to stick on some of these felt heart stickers from Dollar Tree, just one on the front and one on the back of the bottoms of the jute pieces, and then use small dabs of hot glue to adhere them just underneath the bow at the front. I then go in with one of the medium-sized white felt heart stickers from Dollar Tree and just adhere it to the big red heart slightly under some of the twine to the left side. To make a hanger for this piece, I used some red gingham ribbon from Dollar Tree and just tied a knot and then dovetailed the end and used hot glue to glue it to the front where the holes were for the jute twine hanger. I couldn't fit the ribbon through the hole, so this was my next best option. I did that on both sides, making knots and dovetailing the ends and hot gluing it just to the front of the board. And that was it for this project. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments below. DIY number 3 is a cute little Hobby Lobby dupe. To start, I began with one of these foam holographic heart hangers that I got from Dollarama. It came in a pack of multiples, but I only needed the one. And one of these wooden bead hanger frames from Dollar Tree. I like the white frame, so I'm going to leave it as is, but I'm going to take out the backing because we're not going to need it for this. So I just removed the backing and then used some needle nose pliers to pull out the little tabs around the frame that hold it into place. Then I hot glued the hanger pieces that were showing through just to the back of the frame. Next, I decided on the placement of the heart, where it was going to fit into the frame. When I was happy with the placement, I just used a pencil to mark where I needed to make some cuts so that it would lay flat in the inlet part of the frame where the backing would have gone. And I just used my scissors to make the trims so that it would fit nicely into the back of the frame. To add the writing to the heart, I used these white letter stickers from Dollar Tree and spelled out the word hugs in the center of the red heart. Then I used my free hand with a pencil and paint marker to draw on 50 cents underneath of it. When I realized I didn't like how it was turning out, I quickly went to my Cricut and made a decal that said the same thing and adhered it on to the opposite side of the heart. I used hot glue along the edges of the heart where it would be touching in the frame and glued it into the frame. And to cover the hole on the top of the heart, I made a simple shoestring bow and dovetailed the ends and adhered it on with my hot glue. DIY number 4 is a sweet little home decor piece that you could easily buy in stores, but I couldn't find one near me, so I thought I'd make it, and I probably made it for less. I started out with one of these house-shaped dry erase boards from Dollar Tree. Mine's seen better days, thanks to my children, but that's not going to matter in the end. We're going to use the back for the front of this project, and I began by giving it 2 coats, let it dry in between, of my white Bear chalk paint. You don't actually have to be as precise as I'm being because afterwards I do go back in and end up painting the top of the frame part white as well, so it doesn't really matter if you get paint onto it. On my Cricut Joy, I cut out a decal that says home is where the lives. We'll be using a heart shape to fill in the rest of that saying. I will say I love my Cricut Joy. It's super compact and little. I love it for that reason and for quick projects like this. However, I'm not such a super fan of the smart vinyl. You can see me struggling here. I think it's the backing. It's thicker than the backing on your regular vinyl, and I find that makes it a lot harder to get them off, especially when they are smaller letters. Home I struggled with, but I was able to manage, but I could not get the small letters to work. It was next to impossible. So I went with plan B and used stickers from the Dollar Tree to spell out the rest of my words. I just used these small black ones and put them onto my ruler so that I would have them evenly placed. Once I was happy with the placement on the ruler, I moved them over to the house shape and lay them on top there. These stickers aren't super sticky, so once they are laid on, I did give the entire house piece a coat of Mod Podge to help seal them in. Here I am just taking a small brush and the same white chalk paint from Bear and just giving the edge of the house, not including the roof because it'll be covered, 2 coats, let it dry in between. I mixed some red and black acrylic paint from Dollar Tree on the side and got a color as close to the word home as possible and painted a wooden heart that came in a pack from Dollarama. Then with 2 of the larger popsicle sticks, I believe I found these at Dollarama. I think they can be found at Walmart also. I just am going to create a roof shape and chimney shape. So I just do this by laying it onto the house to see how long I want it. And then I just use my pencil to mark straight up from the center where the roof meets. So that way it'll be like a 45-degree miter cut. This is just eyeballing it this way, but you could do it on a miter box if you wanted. I'm just cutting mine with scissors and it worked out pretty good for me. I used the piece that I cut first as my template for the second piece so that they would meet up at the same angle that I had cut the first time. For the chimney piece, I just used some of the leftover popsicle stick, cut it into a rectangle, and cut it on a 45-ish degree angle on the bottom so it would line up along the bottom of the roof. I gave my wood pieces a coat of the Minwax water-based stain in American Walnut, just using a paintbrush to brush it on and then let it dry. I did this on the top, the back, the sides, and the tops and bottoms. When everything was dry, it was time to assemble my pieces onto the house. I did this with Aileen's clear tacky glue. Any glue will work in this instance. I just put it onto the back of the heart, glued the heart down, and then put it on to the points of the roof shape and then glued on my roof pieces. And I glued the chimney piece onto the back of the right hand roof piece. DIY number 5 is a sweet little door hanger I'm making for my children. Starting with one of these hanging metal envelopes, I used my heat gun to heat up the glue and a Dollar Tree scraper to remove the bow and as much of the glue as possible. I also cut off the hangers. I'm going to be making 3 of these, but I'll just show you the process for one. You'll want to make one for each child if you're going to make these. So the total for one obviously is definitely under $5. For me, the total for 3 goes over, but I thought I'd include it anyways because if you only have one child, it's definitely a project under $5. Or if you just want to make one door hanger, you didn't have to add a name to it. You could use that as a decoration also in your home. With some Dollar Tree vinyl and some holographic vinyl that I had on hand, I just traced out the shape of the envelope and used my scissors to cut it out. Once it was cut out, I tried to dry fit it inside the envelope, but it was a little too big, so I just trimmed off small little slivers off the sides until it fit into the envelope. I also had to actually trim off a little off the bottom to make it fit into the envelope as well. When I was happy with how the vinyl was fitting into the envelope, I then began adhering it. I started at the tip of the envelope and peeled back a little bit of the backing off the vinyl so that only a little bit of the vinyl was sticky. Then I worked my way down into the envelope with my fingers, smoothing it out as I go, and then kind of just pushing it in under the envelope flap, like where the opening is. And then I just used some scissors because they were closest. A pencil would probably work. And I just kind of push it down and work it down along the bottom inside as best as possible. Any that got caught on the opening part of the envelope, I just tried to remove as best as possible. Also, you want it to look as clean as possible, but obviously it's kind of a tricky process. I kind of got better as I went along. To clean up the edge along the top of the flap, I just used my sanding sponge from Dollar Tree and sanded in a downwards motion away from the paper to clean up that edge. On my Cricut Joy, I printed out the names of my children and transferred them onto the fronts of the envelopes. Then with some Dollar Tree wooden beads, I lucked out to find these, I think, a year ago and hadn't really done anything with them. So I thought this would be a perfect project. I measured out over one of my door handles in my house to see how many beads I needed. This may be larger or smaller for you, but for me, I needed 15 beads. Then I strung them on to some jute twine. To re-pierce the hole through the vinyl, I just used my Cricut weeding tool and turned it around, rotated it a few times as best as possible. If you want to remove the sticker off the back of your metal envelopes, obviously do so. A heating tool will probably help you to get this off as easy as possible because it wasn't coming off too easy just with my fingers. Then I went back to my door hanger and knotted it where the beads met in a circle, then just kind of eyeballed how long I wanted it to hang the envelope down from the doorknob part, sorry, losing my words there. I tied it on to the metal envelope and then used some dots of hot glue to hold it in place and to really make sure that the knot would not come undone. To dress up the string of the door hanger, I decided to sandwich some wooden hearts onto the strings. I got this pack from Dollarama, so I just took one of the wooden hearts and straightened the string as best as possible and glued one of the wooden hearts underneath of the string. Then I added a little more hot glue and sandwiched another wooden heart on top so that it was over and under the strings. I repeated this 2 more times, so there was 3 hearts hanging from the door hanger. Lastly, I hot glued on one more of the unfinished wooden hearts onto the center of where you could see the glitter heart from the very beginning. It kind of makes it look like it's embossed, but I just added a little wooden heart to it. And that is it for these cute little hangers that I will be hanging on my children's doors on Valentine's Day with a sweet little love note in it for them. If you enjoyed these projects, you'll have to let me know which one was your favorite. And if you want to keep watching, here's some videos I think you might like. Until next time, bye. As always, thanks for watching. And if you want to see more of this content, like more DIYs and thrift flips, why don't you consider hitting that big red subscribe button to be notified anytime I upload a new video.